USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the Game of the Week podcast for Thursday, January 28th, 2021. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This week's Game of the Week has probably been on the calendars of fans from both schools. It's number 2 North Dakota and number 9 Omaha. It's a weekend series, and on Friday night it'll be carried nationally on CBS Sports Network.
And joining us now to preview this week's Game of the Week, the head coach of Omaha, that is Mike Gabinet. Mike, a good season thus far for your team. I look at, the fact that your team seemingly has gotten better throughout the entire year. How do you feel like your guys are playing heading into a big series against North Dakota?
Yeah, it's nice to get back on track since the Christmas break. I thought we had an excellent pod where we got those 10 games in before the break. And really, I thought our group played extremely well throughout the pod, with the exception of maybe a few periods here and there. But overall, very happy with the team's performance, and nice to go into the break there feeling good about our group. And then obviously we got hit by COVID. They're just returning from Christmas, and so we got shut down for 10 days, and then a couple more cases right after that. So we were kind of out of commission for 2 weeks, and that's kind of following a 5-day break for Christmas. So really a little bit of an unorthodox return to play here. But then we got back on track against Colorado College and then Denver here. So we had 4 games in 7 days, and it was nice to come away with 3 wins there. And now, we got the whole team back and able to practice normally and everything like that. So looking forward to obviously a very talented North Dakota team coming into our building here in Omaha.
You mentioned the NCHC pod and the way your team played there. Obviously, that is a bit of a quirk in this season, the fact how this schedule kind of has come about and been built. And now I look, without getting too deep on North Dakota, we'll do that a little bit later, but you now play 10 games for the rest of the season, and 6 of them are going to be against North Dakota. Now, I'm sure you've seen this team a lot and all of that sort of stuff, but it feels strange to know that you have 10 games left and 60% of your games are against one single opponent.
Well, the positive is our pre-scouts come down in volume, and so we know who we're playing, and we'll definitely their tendencies here by the end of it. And it is what it is. It's the COVID year. We're in that division with Denver, North Dakota, and Colorado College, so very tough. I'd like to see our strength of schedule up against anybody else when you've got North Dakota and Denver for, was scheduled for 12 games against those guys. So tough opponents, but also exciting. You get a chance to take on the number 2 team in the country right now, and a very good team. And our team's always excited to play North Dakota, and it's a good little rivalry between the 2 programs. So, I'm looking at this whole year as we get to, not we have to. I mean, we get to play North Dakota 6 times, not we have to. And when you have that mindset and you get excited to play them, good things can happen. So we're looking forward to the challenge. We know they're a very good opponent, but we're preparing hard, and we'll be ready to go here Friday night.
Your team has taken some very nice steps forward this season. What do you feel, or how do you kind of attribute some of the positives that you've been able to achieve thus far this season?
Well, I think good things take time. And I think, we kind of live in a world right now of instant gratification, where the reality of a situation is you have to put the work in order to improve. And whether that's recruiting, whether that's practice, whether that's development, it's all those things in combination to have success long term. And again, I give a lot of credit to our coaching staff for recruiting, top players here that want to be here. They want to put the work in. They want to get better. They're hungry to improve. And when you combine that with a good environment, I think special things happen. And, we're really fortunate to just have some exceptional young men here that are driven hockey players to improve, and they're working hard, and we're taking steps in the right direction. We've got a long ways to go still, but we're definitely on the right path.
How much has the experience of this team helped? I look at the guys that are at the top of your offensive flooring, and Chase Primo, a junior, Taylor Ward, a junior, Taylor Weiss, a junior, Kevin Conley, a senior. You've got some upperclassmen who are really performing well right now.
And ultimately, that's what you expect out of those guys. By your 3rd year in college, that's your year to take that next step in your development, both individually and collectively. And they've done just that. You can see Chase Primo competing hard. Weiser's habits are improving. Ward's moving his feet. His pace is improving because obviously those guys are super talented and have unbelievable sticks and can make plays. And Kevin Connelly, he's just such a complete two-way player, and when he's going, our team's really going. So very proud of those guys. They're just growing. They're growing, and you look at how they're playing. I thought Taylor Ward has best game of his career on Sunday against Denver. And you're just not even the fact he had 2 goals, but just the way he played the game. And I mean, that's what you love to see as a coach. When you see guys putting the work in, you see them growing, you see the discomfort they have to go through to get to that next level. That's exciting. And, a lot of guys don't want to accept that challenge. And we've got guys that understand that. They're learning what it takes to be elite, and they're growing. And to me, that's a real special thing to do with our players.
We're talking with Mike Gabinet, Omaha head coach. You've kept your opponents to 2 goals or less in all but 3 games this season. 2 sophomore goaltenders most of the time this season for Isaiah Seville. Could you talk a little bit about your 2 netminders and how they've been performing for you?
Well, that's exactly one of our goals, is 2 goals or less a game. If we can keep opponents to 2 goals or less, we feel we have a strong percentage, obviously, at a victory, and they're probably the 2 most important factors in that, along with obviously playing good team defense and 5-man units and probably all that stuff you hear all the time. But first off, with Isaiah, he's been tremendous this year. He's just, again, you look at a guy that's been growing over his time here, and again, just even in practice, you can see his growth coming. You can see it mentally, physically. He's just really starting to mature nicely. He's putting the work in necessary to be an elite goalie, and he's getting rewarded right now with some very good hockey. So he's been tremendous. He was excellent against Denver on Sunday night there and had a great game. And then we've had Austin Roden go in there and give us a couple of really big games as well. And I think you need that. You need those guys that can go in and help you win games as well. And he's done a great job of that. So first off, 2 excellent kids, young men, and obviously great goaltenders.
You mentioned the long pause coming out of the Christmas break, the 5 days, and then the extended pause for COVID. How did you as a coaching staff and how did the team keep a good mindset through all that?
Well, that's exactly it. Well, the first step is to talk about it. Talk about our mindset. I think it's easy to go into blaming, complaining, or defending yourself or having excuses. But when you talk about it and you talk about your mindset, I think that helps you put you in the right state of mind and make sure we're worrying about what we can control and what we can do to get better. And I think, again, it was kind of exciting as a coach. It's obviously frustrating, but when you step back and now you've got 2 guys practicing on this sheet of ice, and these 4 guys can only practice by themselves. You only got 8 healthy guys. Nobody else can skate. It makes you be creative and find ways to, not only develop individually, but still try to develop collectively a little bit. But in the long run, the one nice thing that came out of it was I got a bunch of one-on-one time with some guys. Which was kind of exciting because you usually don't, you're coaching 26, 27 guys, and now all of a sudden you only have maybe 10 guys on the ice. So to get those one-on-one relationships, continue to work on developing those and getting to know guys even better and helping them develop. I thought that was kind of a bonus. So obviously not ideal. And I think it showed a little bit against Colorado College. You haven't had a team practice before you play those guys. But I think there was some positive that came out of it as well. And now we just got to, get our fitness level back up to where it should be and our team play back up to where it should be and continue to grow now that we have everybody back.
Mike, before we let you go, you talked about the fact that you're going to play a lot of games against North Dakota, but what about North Dakota? I think anybody that has seen them play knows that they can be a pretty explosive team. They can score goals quickly. They can score goals in bunches. What has to go into your mentality, your mindset to limit this team and find ways to keep that goals allowed to 2 or less against a powerhouse like North Dakota?
Yeah, well, first off, you got to know what you're up against and respect your opponent. And like we talked about earlier, that's probably the most talented roster in the country. So they're very deep. Obviously, their D-core is extremely talented and likes to get up in the play and move pucks. And they're very, very effective off the transition. So, you have to be extremely smart managing the puck as you come into their offensive zone and put pucks in the proper place and make sure they're earning what they get against you and not feeding their transition. So there's some strategic things that you have to do against those elite teams and make sure we play to our identity and be hard to play against and give ourselves every opportunity for success.
Well, it should be a great weekend series. The start of what might turn out to be a rivalry by the time this is all over. 6 games over the next, let's say, 20, 30, 33 days that Omaha and North Dakota will play against one another. So, Mike Gabinet, we really always appreciate the time you give us, and thanks for that. And good luck this weekend and the rest of the way.
All right, thanks, fellas. Appreciate you having me on.
That's Omaha's Mike Gabinet. More of the Game of the Week podcast coming right up.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
This is the Game of the Week podcast from USCHO.com. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Number 2, North Dakota, 2 games on the road at number 9, Omaha, an upstart Mavericks team that's impressed a lot of people. And as we mentioned with Mike Gabinet, the first 2 of 6 games they'll play throughout the rest of the season.
That's crazy. I know that this is one of those years and schedules just happen to fall the way they do, but they haven't faced each other at all. Here we are almost in the month of February, and now they will play each other. 2 road series, basically. Each team will head to play one another, and then the final 2 weeks of the series they'll play single games, home and home, over 2 weekends. It's a different way of approaching it. I'm sure you and I were saying off the air, this is one that there will probably be some tension and some blood boiling by the end, and if we had a Donnybrook at some point, I wouldn't be totally surprised. But it should be good hockey. I mean, these 2 teams, they're fighting for the top spot, among others, particularly St. Cloud in the NCHC. It's a big series for them.
We didn't expect Mike Gabinet to reveal his game plan for North Dakota, but you can rest assured that to fight all those weapons, Omaha is going to need to execute that very well and get some great goaltending.
Yeah, goaltending is going to be key, and you heard Mike Gabinet talk about it. That this is a team that has kind of prided itself in allowing 2 goals or less most of the season. And even when they gave up a lot of goals, they had a 6-5 win this season. But that's not the type of game they can get into. That's not what they can do against North Dakota. They absolutely, positively will have to find a way to slow this North Dakota team down, shut down their offense, and then at the end of the day, they have to get great goaltending.
The other matchup in the NCHC has number 6 Minnesota Duluth traveling to Miami. This is the time of year when Scott Sandelin's teams really tend to take it up 1 or 2 more notches. It's a Miami team that has shown some glimpses of some really good play. They'll have their hands full.
Yeah, it's the consistency thing. We talk about that with a lot of teams. And I actually mentioned this in Tuesday Morning Quarterback this week with Paul Weston, that I don't feel like we've had a lot of teams, any teams really, put forward 100% consistent efforts there. It's been a struggle this year for teams to get that night in, night out good efforts. And if I think Miami can bring their game and play well and stay disciplined, and I think that's a big part. You have to keep Duluth from getting onto the power play. They have a chance. This is one of those weekends where that Miami looks at this as a chance to earn a couple of big wins. They need something to move up a little bit in the standings. They're right now tied for 7th, so the cellar with Colorado College. So they need something here, and you just need to start playing consistently and consistently well.
Looking to Hockey East with Boston University just before we started recording, announcing that they were on a pause for the rest of the month. That means the BUBC games are off for this weekend, leaving one premier matchup and another rivalry matchup, as this weekend has been advertised. Number 16, UMass Lowell, home and home with UMass. Lowell is itching to play, and UMass has had a few bumps in the road lately.
Lowell has played a grand total of 4 games this entire season, and they were not a school that was trying to delay, like Boston University didn't want to play anything until after the new year. So Lowell was trying to play games in the first half, and either their opponents had COVID problems or Lowell themselves. They've had a lot of COVID issues and players coming down with COVID, and even staff members, from what I understand. So they're hungry. It's been a while. It's been almost a month since they've played a game. And then, but throw in the fact this is a rivalry. This is a series that, Lowell really gets up for. I think if there's 2 opponents out there, maybe 3, that the Riverhawks and their coaching staff really love to play. It's UMass, Boston College, and Boston University. And so this is that sister school series. I think that Lowell knows that they have a little bit more history in hockey, but UMass has had the better teams of late. I think every time that they get together, the Riverhawks feel like they still have something to prove.
ECAC has this weekend off from league play, which left number 11 Quinnipiac without any action for the weekend. Meanwhile, Long Island University had some games postponed and canceled with Atlantic hockey teams as that league tries to get a full schedule in. So those two teams managed to find a way to play together. Brett Riley's team off a split against club team at Liberty University will travel to Hamden, Connecticut to take on the number 11 Quinnipiac Bobcats.
You know what? I give Rand Pecknold so much credit that when there has been an opportunity to play a game, he finds a way. He gets games scheduled. And you go back to when they started this season, I think they ended up, they were delayed in their start and then ended up playing 8 games in 14 days. I mean, that's a crazy schedule for any team. But Rand Pecknold said at the time, it's really important just to get these guys going. So you had a weekend that was going to be an off weekend. LIU needed a game if they could get one, and go ahead and play. I think it's great. And I think, for both of these programs, just the continuity, getting out there, playing games, more reps, I think that's a positive.
In the WCHA, a league matchup that is pretty compelling, Michigan Tech, which has had some good success as of late, at number 18 in the USCHO poll. They travel to number 8, Bowling Green, the Falcons, off a 2-game series loss at Bemidji last weekend.
Yeah, you think that Bowling Green's not going to be hungry. They certainly will be. But, then you've got a Michigan Tech team that's playing well of late. They moved themselves into the poll. I think that's the first time this season that they've been nationally ranked in the USCHO poll. So, it's one of those series that I think that the defense for Tech, goaltending, has been really strong of late. They're trying to keep that going. And against a team like Bowling Green, there's going to be a lot of hunger. Don't get me wrong there. I think that Bowling Green has proven that they are a solid team. And last weekend was their first real big blip on their schedule where they just didn't have it against Bemidji State. So there'll be some desire there. This should be a good weekend series.
Number 3, Minnesota State was supposed to host a non-league 2-game series against fellow WCHA member Alabama Huntsville. That got called off. So now Minnesota State will be taking on Bemidji in a single game at Bemidji this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, I know this is going to go down, I believe, as a non-conference game, but big game when you really look at it in terms of both teams. Bemidji's playing so well. They've already taken down Minnesota State once. They played a 1-goal game against them as well. They're going to try to find a way to keep this momentum going. And if you're Minnesota State, you've got to be careful. This is kind of that game that you don't want to get into a trap and say, we'll be okay. The fact, I think, that Bemidji's coming off that sweep of Bowling Green probably helps. It'll open the players' eyes, open the coaches' eyes a little bit wider so that they know that this is not a series, this is not a game you can take lightly.
In the Big Ten, nobody is playing for home ice in the tournament already. Notre Dame is going to host those best-of-1 games that'll be played. But people will be jockeying for position, for ranking, and for last change. 3 matchups this weekend in the Big Ten. Number 4, Minnesota is at Ohio State for a pair. Notre Dame's at Penn State. That gets started on Thursday night. And Michigan State has a couple at Wisconsin.
When you look at the Big Ten and their standings, nothing is really sewn up. You felt like Minnesota was walking away with this season at one point, but then they have a couple of losses against Notre Dame their last time out in Big Ten play. And now they're trying to, make sure that they get back on solid footing. And even the bottom of the standings, you look at Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, they're all separated by 1 game, basically 3 points, 18, 17, 16, 15. You're right now, that one team will get a bye in the playoffs. The last 6 will play each other. So you're trying to get into that 4th spot in the standings. And if you want to be a home team when you play in that neutral site tournament, not so neutral for Notre Dame, but it's got to be single elimination hockey. And that's the crazy thing about when you get into an entire tournament, that single elimination, that seems to be what the Big Ten is going with, and don't be surprised if you see a few more leagues go that way. But those single eliminations, you want every edge you can get. Last change, putting your stick down, second on a face-off, all those little things mean something.
Hockey East has had a tough time putting together a schedule this season, as we've mentioned. But right behind them with that trouble has been Atlantic Hockey. Bentley played on Tuesday for the first time since December 19th. Canisius has only managed to get 4 games in conference. The league's coaches met in separate East and West meetings with Commissioner Bob DiGregorio over the weekend, and they hammered out a revised schedule that's going to get everybody playing each other 4 times if they can squeeze them all in, and they'll get back underway this weekend. How tough is it for all these teams who have had to pause, not have practice, not know who they're going to play, and then get all these games crammed in a pretty tight schedule? How tough is that going to be, Jim?
Really tough, really difficult, and tough on the league as well, because you're looking at the point that you know that you've done something to revise a schedule. The odds of that schedule staying in put and actually being executed, not that great. You're still going to have more cancellations. You're still going to have more postponements. So, I think at this point, you're just trying to get as many games as possible played. You'd like to see some sort of balance, but I think for both Hockey East and Atlantic Hockey, balance can't be the focus. The focus really has to be getting some games played and doing your best to have some balance. At the end of the year, I think every one of these leagues will be doing something about winning percentage and not points earned. There's no way that everybody's going to get through this all the way to March, first weekend of March, without another blemish. So I think that we're going to have some issues here, and you just have to do your best. It's a different year.
And you do want to get at least 13 NCAA games in for every team in your league so that they could be eligible for the postseason tournament. And there are already teams looking at some difficulty with that. One of them is Boston University, as we mentioned. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get the games in, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit USCHO.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.